Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Tuesday, December 12th Talk Sports Show with Alec Pecano. Today's show, I will be going over my best performance of the day for fantasy football, as well as my waiver wire. Let's get started. My best performance of the weekend was Baker Mayfield, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He threw for 144 yards and 2 touchdowns, and he also had a rushing touchdown. Now, here's the thing I have to say about Baker is his passing yards, he's inconsistent with his passing yards, but he does get at least 1 or 2 passing touchdowns a game. And he does get a rushing touchdown too. He does have rushing upside. So I would feel comfortable because the fantasy playoffs for some people start this week. So I would feel comfortable starting Baker Mayfield if you have a CJ Stroud. If Stroud doesn't play. If you play in a Superflex league and you can start 2 quarterbacks, I would feel very confident in starting Baker Mayfield. Now here's my waiver wire for this week. Little switch. You get running back, tight end, quarterback. You get QB, running back, tight end, wide receiver. So my quarterback waiver wire. And yes, there is a new addition to the waiver wire. You still get the 5 players, but you also get a long shot. Again, under 80% rostered. The first guy on my waiver wire for the quarterbacks, and this should be if you need a quarterback, this should be your number 1 ad. Matthew Stafford, Los Angeles Rams, 33.6% roster. Stafford has been playing very, very good over the last few weeks, and I've been impressed, actually. I like the rest of their schedule, and I would say if somehow Puka Nacua, Tyler Higbee, or Kyron Williams is somehow on your waiver wire, pick them up immediately. Just like Matthew Stafford. Because Matthew Stafford's always rostered in 33% of leagues. 33.6. So I would pick up Matthew Stafford, put a waiver claim in for Stafford. The second guy on the quarterback waiver wire is Tommy DeVito, 3.8% rostered. Now, I didn't ever think I'd be talking about Mr. DeVito on the waiver wire, but I am. Here it is. The Tommy DeVito. If you're on a Tommy DeVito hype train with me, hop on board. It is open. The Tommy DeVito hype train has started up. It has not left the station yet. Hop on. Jump on the hype train with me. Tommy DeVito. I've been surprised how good he's been playing. I like Tom. If you're desperate at QB and want to throw a dart, I'd throw a dart and put a waiver claim in for Tommy DeVito. This next guy, these next 3, I talked about them last week on the waiver wire. Number 3, Jake Browning, 29.5% rostered. His roster percentage rate is rising. I talked about him last week, and I believe he was under 20%. He was right at 20% rostered, and now he's almost at 30%. It seems like people are listening to what I say. Jake Browning is a good quarterback. I know he has not had opportunity before this year to start. He's starting for the Bengals, and he's actually playing pretty good. Number 4, Desmond Ridder. He just had a big game. He had a really good game against the Buccaneers. And I like the rest of his schedule. They're done with the Buccaneers, but they still got New Orleans and I believe Carolina. And we know how bad Carolina is. So if you need a QB, go out and put a waiver claim in for Desmond Ridder or Gardner Minshew. They're both under 20% roster. And my long shot QB this week is Easton Stick, who is going to start for the Chargers. And here's the thing. We don't know how long Justin Herbert's going to be out. So if you're a Justin Herbert owner, I would, unless you have a better backup option, I would go out to the waiver wire and I would add Easton Stick. My running back adds, maybe there's only one change on this, and then obviously the long shot. But Tajay Spears, he did have more rushing yards than Derrick Henry last night, and he's 37% rostered. Now, I know what you're going to say. Derrick Henry is still the number one running back there. It seems like it's more of a split. Henry did have 2 touchdowns last night, which kind of vultured some fantasy points away from Tajay Spears. But I'm going to say this. I would still go out and add Tajay Spears, as he is in my opinion, a good flex play. Really good flex. Zeke Elliott. Now this one, I told y'all on the show last week on here to pick up Ezekiel Elliott because he was going to get a lot of work. And I'm going to give myself a humble brag for that because I was correct. He did have a lot of work last week. And also, one of my best bets was that he was going to go over 58.5 rushing yards. If y'all picked that best bet from Wednesday's show last week, you can thank me because I won you some money. See, I know what I'm doing. I know my stats. But Zeke Elliott, 61.7% rostered. Again, if he's out there in your league and you need a running back, I would go out and add him. Zach Charbonnet's next. Charbonnet and Keaton Mitchell were on here last week. Going to keep it short and sweet with the two of them. Charbonnet out-carried Kenneth Walker last week, and Charbonnet's only 60% route. A shade under 60. He's 60.1% roster. Now, obviously, if you're in a dynasty league, you probably already have Zach Charbonnet, but redraft. If he's on your waiver wire, don't be afraid to put a waiver claim in and try to add him and block a league mate of yours from getting him. Number 4, Joshua Kelly. Joshua Kelly. And the reason I have him on here, he is 9.7% roster. Brandon Staley came out and said last week that it's going to be Isaiah Spiller and Joshua Kelly are going to get a little more. It's going to be a split backfield, basically. Eckler's still going to get his, but you're going to see a little bit more sprinkled in of Joshua Kelly and Isaiah Spiller. And if one or both of them is available, I would put a waiver claim in for either Kelly or Spiller. Because if Eckler does get hurt, then you have the running back number 1. But, if you would rather, I'd rather go Joshua Kelly and put a little more fab on him then put fab on Isaiah Spiller. Keaton Mitchell, he out-touched Gus Edwards, out-carried him, out-touched him, but they both, Keaton Mitchell, I think is going to end up winning people leagues. And my long shot for the running back position is Chase Brown from the Bengals. 1.4% roster. Now, and again, this is pretty much all my leagues are ESPN. So, Chase Brown is available in roughly 98% of leagues because he's only 1% rostered. So, I would highly recommend and advise that you go out and you pick up Chase Brown, put him on your bench. I would not go as far as to start him yet. Waiver wire wide receivers. My top waiver wire ad at wide receiver this week is Parker Washington of the Jaguars. You will see one of his teammates on here too. Parker Washington he was a 6th round pick of the Jags. I don't think anybody was expecting him to make a big impact for the Jags this year due to the fact that they had Zay Jones, Christian Kirk, Calvin Ridley, Evan Ingram, Travis Etienne, Tank Bigsby. But Parker Washington came out of nowhere, basically, the last few weeks since Christian Kirk has gone down with injury. And if you need a wide receiver, all these guys I think are serviceable ads. Just including, so Parker Washington 2.4% roster, and I just explained why I would add him. He's been getting a lot more targets lately. Number 2, Josh Reynolds. It seems like that connection with Jared Goff is back for Josh Reynolds. 7.5% rostered. If you need a flex, that is where I would pick up Josh Reynolds. Put a waiver claim in. See how many targets he gets. If you need help at flex, that's where I would play him. I would not play him in your wide receiver 1, 2. Maybe as a wide receiver 3. For me, he's a wide receiver 3 or a flex. Now, this next guy, I've been waiting for a game like this from him all year. Wan'Dale Robinson, Giants. Now, when Daniel Jones was the quarterback, Wan'Dale Robinson was only getting 4 or 5 targets a game and like 4 or 5 catches for like 50 yards, 60 yards. No touchdowns. He didn't have a touchdown last night, but he had over 80 yards receiving. And I like Wan'Dale Robinson. Again, like I said about Reynolds, Wan'Dale is probably going to be a flex or wide receiver 3 for the rest of the season. Rashee Rice is at number 4. 74.1% roster. Now, as you see here, it's under 80%. So he does not meet the threshold to not be talked about. He is under 80% rostered. And I like me some Rashee Rice. He is starting to become that number 1 wide receiver that the Chiefs need. And I like him. If he's still out on your waiver wire, go claim him. Put a waiver claim in on him. If you have fab left, he is somebody I would burn my fab on. And the last one is Zay Jones, 27.4% rostered. He's got 10 plus targets in 2 straight games. So I would go out and add Zay Jones. And my long shot for wide receiver is Jalen Hyatt. He is starting to come on of late for the Giants. So I would go out and add him. And in my tight end waiver wire, number 1, and this is the guy I originally had as the fantasy football best performance of the week, until I changed my mind. Isaiah Likely, Baltimore Ravens. Isaiah Likely, 45.8% rostered. Now, there was a lot of people that were out on Likely after he had one bad game. I was not one of those people. I stuck with the narrative that he's going to come around and he's going to produce. And Isaiah Likely is my number one tight end ad of the week. Like I said, 45.8% roster. Number two, Tanner Hudson. The last 3 weeks I've talked about Tanner Hudson in the waiver wire. He needs to be rostered in more leagues. Especially tight end premium. Any of the Bengals tight ends. Irv Smith, Tanner Hudson, Drew Sample. They do get a reasonable amount of targets, especially now that Jake Browning is a quarterback. But I like Tanner Hudson because he's starting to build a rapport with Jake Browning, and that is key in fantasy football. Number three, Tucker Kraft. Tucker Kraft has had back-to-back good games, and if you need a tight end, because you've been playing with Daniel Bellinger as your tight end, or Cade Otton, who I talked about last week on the waiver wire, and I hope he's rostered in a lot more leagues now. But Tucker Kraft needs to be rostered in more leagues, because I think even when Luke Musgrave comes back, you have two tight ends there in Green Bay then that are usable in fantasy football. Hunter Henry's at number 4. Now, this one I'm going to say take it with a grain of salt or whatever you want to take it with. The Patriots offense looked half decent last week against Steelers, in which I was surprised how competitive the game was actually. I was not expecting the over. I wasn't expecting New England to have over 20 points. And they beat it by 1. I had under 21.5 points for New England last week, and that failed. But anyway, if you need tight end, I would put a waiver claim in for Hunter Henry. And my last one, this is in deep leagues if you're desperate at tight end. And I'm going to say 12 shallow leagues, so 12 or lower. 12 teams or lower, do not add this guy. Unless, of course, you're still desperate at tight end. But in those kind of leagues, 10 to 12 man leagues, there's a lot of good options on the waiver wire. But 14 man or higher, I would go out, and if you're desperate at tight end, put a waiver claim in for Jeremy Ruckert, tight end on the Jets. He is another guy that's been coming on of late and has gotten a reasonable amount of targets, and I like Jeremy Ruckert. And my long shot tight end for this week is Will Mallory. He is not rostered at all. He's 100% available in ESPN leagues or whatever platform you play fantasy football on. I've been looking, he does get a reasonable amount of targets. And Gardner Minshew does sort of like targeting the tight end. So I would go out and put a waiver claim in for Mr. Will Mallory. And that will do it for me today, ladies and gentlemen. I will see y'all tomorrow afternoon at 11 o'clock. tomorrow morning at 11 o'clock for my NFL picks and upsets and best bets for week 15. We went 16 and 8 last week in our NFL picks. So I will see y'all tomorrow morning at 11 o'clock for that. And a little programming note before I end stream here. December 25th, there will be no Talk Sports show as it is Christmas. And I want everybody to celebrate Christmas with their families. So the college basketball rankings for the week of the 25th will probably be out on that Sunday, the 24th, so Christmas Eve. But I do offer memberships. If you're feeling in the perks for the memberships, if you pick the starter level, you don't really get perks. But the premium and so the $2.99 one, you get to compete with me in fantasy football. And the $9.99, you get a meet and greet with me and a chance to be co-host on the show with me for a week. For 1 week. You get to be a co-host with me and talk with me about sports and ask me any questions you want. I highly recommend getting a membership. And I also started a Bowl Mania group, Capital One Bowl Mania for college football. I started a group, and the link is in the community poll. The link to that group is in the first community poll. One of the community polls I put up today. If you want to join and compete against me in Capital One Bowl Mania and see if you can beat me, let's compete. Winner of that gets to be co-host with me on the show, on the Talk Sports show, for 2 weeks. So 8 days worth of videos. You get to be co-host with me. And if it works out after that, then you can become the full-time co-host with me. But, ladies and gentlemen, that'll do it for me today. I will see y'all tomorrow. Peace.